Welcome back to CTV News Channel. Breaking up is hard to do, as the old song said, but a guy from Saskatoon is breaking up with hundreds of his Facebook friends, one phone call at a time. So far, he's broken up with more than 30 of those Facebook friends, and eventually he hopes to cut out about 500 or so, cleaning house, you might say. And if you think about it, let's be honest, some of those people on your social media accounts, are they really friends? James Avramenko is joining us from our studios in Saskatoon. He's also the host of the podcast. It's called the Friendless Podcast. James, good to have you on CTV News.
Hey, thanks for having me.
So this is really fun here. First of all, why did you decide to do this?
It kind of came out of a couple different things. I'd been seeing a lot of people make those sort of declarative statements about getting off Facebook and going to, live their real true life. And then they, usually come groveling a month later and reconnect their accounts. And so I had wanted to get off Facebook for any number of reasons. But I decided I wanted to do it a little more gradual, a little more deliberate, and try and not burn all the bridges that I had built throughout the years.
So you are actually calling them, which is pretty interesting. And you're using it, obviously, as material as well for your podcast. Talk to us a little bit about how that kind of came to be, that strategy, actually a physical phone call.
Yeah, sure. Well, I mean, I'm an avid podcast listener, and I'd always wanted to start one of my own. But being, just some schmo from Saskatoon, I didn't really have a lot of pull to bring in big celebrity guests or anything like that. And I didn't particularly want to do a true crime podcast. So I was kind of stuck with this one idea because I had a built-in kind of guest list. I'm somebody who I move around quite a bit. I've lived in Victoria, Vancouver, Calgary, now here in Saskatoon. And so I have a pretty kind of broad list of people that I wish I was better at staying in touch with. But I rely quite heavily on Facebook to sort of pretend like I'm staying in connection with people. But in fact, I'm not really. And so I decided what I would do with this show is sort of have a individual one-on-one contact with each person, kind of check in, see how they're doing, and then to also sort of reevaluate if we want to stay in contact somewhere else. I think that a lot of the connections we build on Facebook tend to be sort of more statistics than actual connections. We tend to sort of friend them and leave them and never speak to them again. And so I wanted to sort of touch base and see how they're doing, and then wish them well if we disconnect.
Yeah, and what's great about the podcast is, the conversations you have with these people in which you tell them what you're planning to do, and then there's sort of the back and forth as well. Give us sort of a typical response you get when you get a hold of someone, and you said, I know you've done it with 31, 32 people so far. There's still a lot more people to go. Are people surprised? Are they offended? Or do they try to convince you not to delete them?
I've yet to have anybody actually ask to stay, so that's kind of nice. But the initial reaction almost uniformly is a little hesitant. I think that we have we seem to think that our Facebook personality is who we are. And so I think people initially take a bit of an insult because they think I might be saying I don't like them as a person because of the sort of digital personality that they've cultivated for themselves. But as soon as I sort of explain what I'm looking to do, and that it's not about disconnecting from them and kind of kicking them to the curb, but more about reconnecting on a different platform and with whether it's new language or new medias or whatever it may be. And suddenly people get really excited. Podcasts especially are a really exciting medium right now, and lots of people are exploring all kinds of different ways of using it. And so when I explain what I'm doing with it, it gets people pretty excited to be on the show and kind of use it for their own platform and to start, shilling their own goods.
Absolutely. And also, I guess what you're exploring really is the notion of what is friendship. When is someone really a friend or not a friend? And what does that actually mean to us? And certainly in the age of social media, it's kind of an evolving situation, isn't it?
Very much so. Yeah, I think, like I said before, I think that we have I think that we tend to sort of lean on these large, almost inflated friend lists, and we get some form of validation from having more followers and more likes and more shares and all these kinds of things. And I don't want to say that this is definitely a bad thing. I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing. I think it's just the way we interact now, and we haven't quite figured it out because I don't know if it's possible. Personally, I don't think it is, but maybe somebody else can. But I don't think it's possible to maintain 2,000 true relationships. And so I think that we are losing our ability to have, intimacy and true conversation and true connection.
James Avramenko joining us from our studios in Saskatoon. He is the guy behind the podcast Friendless, and he is unfriending close to 500 friends, calling them each and every one to explain the news to them. Wonderful to have you on CTV. Thanks for this.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.